What if I told you that somewhere in a forgotten psychiatric ward, a 10-year-old boy sits drawing the same image over and over again? The moon, split perfectly in half, bleeding silver into a black sky. What if I told you that astronomers recently discovered hairline fractures forming across the lunar surface, exactly as this child described them 15 years ago? And what if I told you that this boy claims to remember a day that never happened? Or did it? Welcome to a story that will make you question everything you think you know about time, memory, and the fragile boundary between madness and prophecy. This is the story of Marcus Chen, the boy who remembered the impossible. October 13th, 2008. A date that exists in hospital records, in yellowed newspapers, and in the fractured mind of a child who shouldn't remember it. Because according to every calendar, every historical record, every witness on Earth, October 13th, 2008 never existed. The 12th was followed by the 14th, as if time itself had skipped a beat. But Marcus remembered. Dr. Sarah Whitmore first encountered Marcus at Millbrook Psychiatric Facility in Oregon. She was a young psychiatrist then, fresh out of her residency, assigned to the children's ward. Marcus had been brought in by social services after his parents died in what officials called a simultaneous cardiac event. Both healthy adults, no medical history, found dead in their living room with expressions of absolute terror frozen on their faces. The boy was found 3 days later, catatonic in his bedroom, clutching a drawing of the moon split in two. For months, Marcus wouldn't speak. He would only draw the same image hundreds of times. The moon, always broken, always bleeding that strange silver substance that pooled like mercury in his crayon sketches. The nursing staff grew uncomfortable with the drawings. Something about them felt wrong, as if the paper itself was infected. With whatever madness lived in the child's mind, Dr. Whitmore tried everything: play therapy, medication, hypnosis. Nothing worked. Marcus remained locked in his silence, his small hands moving endlessly across paper, recreating that impossible lunar catastrophe with the precision of a photograph. Then, on a cold February morning, Marcus spoke his first words in 6 months. The moon screamed when it broke. Dr. Whitmore nearly dropped her coffee. She had been reviewing his case files when the boy, who she thought was asleep, suddenly sat up and delivered that chilling statement with the calm certainty of someone reciting a grocery list. "Marcus, what do you mean?" the moon screamed. The boy's eyes, which had been vacant for so long, suddenly focused on her with startling clarity. "You don't remember the 13th, do you?" "None of the grown-ups remember, but I do. I remember everything." What followed was the most detailed account of an impossible day that Dr. Whitmore had ever heard. According to Marcus, on October 13th, 2008, he had been playing in his backyard when the sky began to change. First, it was the color. The blue drained away like water from a bathtub, leaving behind a sickly yellow that hurt to look at. Then came the sound, a low humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through the ground, through his bones, through his teeth. His parents came running outside, but they moved strangely, as if walking through thick syrup. Time was broken, Marcus explained to Dr. Whitmore. Everything was too slow, except me. I could move normal, but everyone else was like those old movies where people move funny. As the humming grew louder, Marcus said he looked up at the sky and saw something that should have been impossible. The moon was visible in the daylight, larger than it should have been, and it was ... wrong. Cracks ran across its surface like a broken eggshell, and a silver substance was leaking out, streaming toward Earth in ribbons of liquid light. "That's when it screamed," Marcus continued, his voice never wavering from that disturbing monotone. "The moon screamed like a hurt animal, and all the adults fell down. They just dropped where they were standing, and the sky started to tear." According to the boy, reality itself began to unravel. The air shimmered like heat waves, and through the gaps, he could see other skies, other worlds, other versions of his backyard where different things had happened. In some, his house was made of glass. In others, the trees grew downward into the earth. In one terrifying glimpse, he saw himself as an adult. standing in the same spot, watching the moon break. The silver stuff from the moon touched the ground, and everywhere it touched, things changed. The grass turned into fingers. The sidewalk started breathing. My mum's car grew teeth. But then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The silver streams retreated back into the moon. The cracks sealed themselves. The sky faded back to blue. Time resumed its normal speed, and every adult on Earth stood up with no memory of what had happened. Except Marcus remembered Dr. Whitmore. Documented everything, of course. She had to, but she also had to admit to herself that the boy's story, however impossible, was remarkably consistent. Every time he told it, every detail remained exactly the same. No embellishment, no variation. It was as if he was reading from a script written in his mind. More disturbing were the physical details he provided. Marcus described the exact pattern of the cracks on the moon's surface, the specific angle of the silver streams, the way the sky tore in a zigzag pattern starting from the northeast. He drew diagrams with mathematical precision that shouldn't have been possible for a 10-year-old. Dr. Whitmore began researching. She combed through astronomical records, looking for any anomalies on or around the dates Marcus mentioned. She found nothing. No unusual lunar activity, no cosmic events, no seismic disturbances. October 13, 2008 had simply never existed in any official capacity. But then she found the Ingis paper. Hidden in the basement archives of the Portland Public Library was a single copy of the October 13, 2008 edition of the Millbrook Daily Observer. The paper shouldn't have existed. The library's digital records showed no entry for that date. But there it was, physical and real. With a headline that made Dr. Whitmore's blood run cold, Lunar Anomaly Observed Worldwide Scientists Baffled. The article was brief, almost hastily written, as if the reporter had been struggling to describe something indescribable. It mentioned unprecedented crackling patterns across the lunar surface and silvery discharge visible to the naked eye. Most chilling of all, it quoted several witnesses who described the exact same events Marcus had recounted: the sky changing, color, the temporal distortions, the sound of the moon screaming. But the paper was wrong in every way that mattered. The layout was amateur, the font inconsistent, the photographs grainy and strange. It looked like something created by someone who had never actually seen a real newspaper but was trying to recreate one from memory. And at the bottom of the page, in tiny print, was a single line that made Dr. Whitmore question her sanity. This edition, printed in memory of the day that never was. Dr. Whitmore tried to trace the paper's origin, but hit dead ends at every turn. The Portland Public Library had no record of acquiring it. The Millbrook Daily Observer had ceased publication in 19. When she brought the paper to colleagues, they insisted she was showing them blank pages. Only Marcus could see the text. Years passed. Marcus grew up in the psychiatric facility, never quite integrating with the other patients, never quite responding to treatment. He continued to draw his broken moons, continued to insist that October 13th had happened, continued to remember things that no one else could remember. Dr. Whitmore left Millbrook in 2015, but she never forgot Marcus. She went on to become a respected researcher in temporal psychology, publishing papers on false memory syndrome and collective amnesia. But late at night, she would sometimes take out her old files and stare at Marcus's drawings, wondering if madness was just another word for seeing too clearly. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. The European Space Agency's Lunar Reconnaissance Mission detected something that shouldn't exist. Hairline fractures across the moon's surface. Invisible to ground-based telescopes, but clearly visible in higher resolution orbital photography. The cracks formed an exact pattern, a zigzag starting from the northeast, spreading outward like breaks in an eggshell. The same pattern Marcus had been drawing for 15 years. Dr. Whitmore saw the news report and immediately drove back to Millbrook. Marcus, now 25, was still there, still drawing, still remembering. When she showed him the photographs from the space agency, he looked at them with the same calm certainty he'd always possessed. "They're getting worse," he said simply. The cracks. They're growing. Marcus, how is this possible? How could you know? For the first time in all the years she'd known him, Marcus smiled. It wasn't a happy expression, because it's going to happen again, Dr. Whitmore. October 13th, the moon is going to break for real this time. And when it does, everyone will remember the first time. Everyone will remember the day that never was. How do you know? Marcus set down his crayon and looked directly at her. Because I've lived this before, lots of times. Every time the moon breaks, time resets, and everyone forgets, except me. But each time, the cracks get a little bit worse, and this time, he picked up his drawing of the broken moon and held it up to the light. Through the paper, Dr. Whitmore could swear she saw stars. This time, I don't think it's going to heal. The official response to the lunar fractures has been measured calm. Scientists speak of natural geological processes of the moon's core cooling and contracting. They assure us that the cracks pose no threat to Earth, that our celestial companion has been stable for billions of years and will continue to be. But in quiet corners of the internet, a different conversation is taking place. Other people are coming forward, claiming to remember October 13th, 2008. They described the same yellow sky, the same temporal distortions, the same silver streams bleeding from the moon. Most disturbingly, they all claim to have found the same impossible newspaper, and they all report the same recurring dreams. Dreams of standing in their backyards, watching the moon crack open like an egg, spilling its silver contents across the sky while reality tears apart. Around them, Dr. Whitmore has resumed regular visits to see Marcus. She brings him art supplies and listens to his stories, trying to understand how a child could remember something that never happened with such perfect clarity. But lately, she's begun to wonder if the question isn't how Marcus remembers the impossible, but why the rest of us have forgotten. Last week, Marcus drew something different. For the first time in 17 years, he created an image that wasn't the broken moon. Instead, he drew Earth, but not the Earth we know. This Earth had a different shape, different continents, a different arrangement of land and sea. At the top of the drawing, he wrote a single word, before what? Dr. Whitmore asked. Marcus looked at her with eyes that seemed far too old for his face. Before the first time the moon broke. Before we forgot what the world used to look like. The implications of that statement have kept Dr. Whitmore awake for 6 consecutive nights. If Marcus is right, if the moon has broken before and reset time, then everything we know about history, about reality, about the nature of existence itself, could be a lie built on collective amnesia. But perhaps the most terrifying possibility is that Marcus isn't crazy at all. Perhaps he's the only sane person left. The only one who remembers the truth of what we've lost each time the universe has tried to forget its own mistakes. October 13th, 2025 is 8 months away. Astronomers continue to monitor the lunar fractures, which they insist are stable and pose no threat. Marcus continues to draw, his hands moving with the mechanical precision of someone who has done the same task 1,000 times. And somewhere, in the basement of the Portland Public Library, a newspaper that shouldn't exist continues to wait for someone else to remember the day that never was. The question isn't whether Marcus Chen is telling the truth about October 13th, 2008. The question is whether we're ready to remember what really happened when we finally allow ourselves to see those cracks spreading across the face of our oldest celestial companion. Because, if Marcus is right, if the moon is going to break again, then we're not just facing the end of our satellite, we're facing the end of this version of reality, this iteration of existence. This draft of the universe that someone or something has been editing and re-editing every time the story goes wrong. And this time, according to the boy who remembers everything, the editor might finally give up and let the whole thing fall apart. The moon hangs in our sky tonight, appearing whole and perfect to our limited eyes. But if you know where to look, if you have access to the right equipment, you can see them. The cracks. Growing slowly but inevitably toward the moment when the moon will scream again. And time will skip another beat. The only question is whether. This time, we'll all remember when we wake up. Or, if there will be anyone left to wake up at all. Marcus Chen sits in his room at Millbrook Psychiatric Facility, drawing the same broken moon he's drawn 10,000 times before. But lately, he's been adding something new to his pictures. In the corner of each drawing, barely visible unless you know to look for it, he draws a small figure standing in a backyard, looking up at the fractured sky. The figure is getting older in each drawing, and in the most recent one, the figure is no longer alone. Dr. Whitmore discovered this yesterday when she noticed her own face staring back at her. From Marcus's latest artwork, she asked him why he had drawn her there. Watching the moon break, Marcus looked at her with that same calm certainty he'd always possessed. Because you're starting to remember too, aren't you, Dr. Whitmore? You're starting to remember the day. That never was. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to tell him he was wrong. But late at night, when she closes her eyes, she can almost hear it. A low humming that seems to come from everywhere at once, and the distant, impossible sound of the moon beginning to scream.